This is Advanced Steel 2017 with a custom install for Stedman's with some of their joint entries in. And one of the joint entries we're going to look at today is to do with their purling connections. So if I just come in here, this is the single purling, this is the double purling connection. So we're probably going to look at the double purling today. So you can activate from this command on the special palette for them. If you can't find it on there, hopefully you should be able to find it down in here. There should be a double purling splice plate, is the one that's called up. So I'm going to activate it from the normal connection bolt entry. So it will prompt you to select the column first of all, and then select the purling 1 with a left and a right click, and a left and a right click then for purling 2. And it should go off and read an entry from the database and should apply a connection at the joint. So we just have a quick look there. We can see it's put a plate in. It should pull defaults from a library setting, so hopefully most of this should be a default value as recommended from Stedman's to give you the correct distances that you require. You can check this by accessing the library. So it takes a few seconds to read this. It should be configured to give the correct end distances and also the edge distances and also a typical edge distance for the plate. That doesn't mean you can't change it if you wish to use a thicker plate in the system, etc. So with that in place, it should have gone and picked up here. So I've got a C channel that we've used, and obviously it's picked up the line entry from the table here in the database. Basically, the table will store all the entries that you make within the individual tabs of the dialog. So to return back to the plate cleat at the front here, obviously the plate thickness, you can move the cleat left or right if you want to. It's set for edge distance here, so it's working off of the bolt centers, and then it's using values 3 and 4 to control the edge distances for the plate. Obviously, if you change the parameters in here to total, I expect the other values in here will become available. So obviously we worked out to try and give a standard cleat width for a standard plate size of 130. You come into the bolt dimension tab again. This should be set up for you. Horizontal distance layout from the purling has been set, and there's been a gap distance set in the middle. So this is value 1 here, which is in the little picture on the right here. So this is the split gap between the two purlins. We tend to set it from purling, but again, you could change it to a different one if you so wished. I think the other option is total. The edge distance here is set to the distance given by Stedman's, which is 37 millimeters. We haven't got any bolt stagger here that's required. And similarly, then you get options to set the vertical bolts. So this is the bolts coming from the column face away from the column across the depth of the section. So here we've said from purling start distance 41, and we've got 2 number bolts across with a cross center of 118. Again, obviously these variables are coming from the criteria given by Stedman's. Similarly, we can go into the bolt size here. For this particular installation, we do have some ISO 4017 screws they're referred to. Some people might prefer to just set it back to a set bolt option, which is still available in the system should you so wish. This is coming from the Graitec Power Pack. These are compliant with CE marking. Again, you'll see some other bolts in here at the moment which are grayed out. This is because this tab is controlling a number of bolts throughout the actual macro, and these elements will not become available until you actually select an appropriate element, for example, a sleeve or a stay. If you do wish to put in a rib stiffener, you can add a rib stiffener. Typical in Advanced Steel, the elements are grayed out unless you activate them. Obviously, you can see the rib stiffener appear in there. If you wish to make your own entry of this, you can probably add something different in here and store a different entry in the library if you so wish. Obviously, you can set about altering it in here. It's fairly typical for people who've ever worked with Advanced Steel will know that you sort of need to select a drop down and put elements in here to set up what you want. Like, so if you want a chamfer or something on the end here, so I've got to put a measurement in here. And obviously I probably need to put an appropriate measurement in the other side to actually get it to do something. It'll take the corner of the plate off here. Obviously, if you leave that set in the joint and then store the joint entry, it will store those parameters for you. I'm just going to untick that and it grays it out again. Just going to come to a sleeve option here. So it should pick up a standard sleeve that's required, obviously, and it's generated that into the joint already. That's actually the sleeve there. With that, it will activate obviously the sleeve length here. And give an edge distance back for the bolts, which is value 3, which is on each end. Obviously, if there was more bolts, value 4 would come into play, which would obviously you would change this in here to 2. We've centered the sleeve, etc. on here. Obviously, if you don't want a sleeve, you just untick it at the top there, and it should actually put the holes through into the section there. Similarly, just to show you, if I just pop back to the bolts tab now, you can see that the sleeve bolts have become active. If I come here to the stays, again, we don't have any set, but I can turn both of them on. And with that, the stays will be activated. Some stay plates will be put into the back sort of web flange point of the column. There's various adjustments in here, but it should be automatically set to go to the Steadman stay profile. So obviously, if you click it, you might change it, but you should be able to find it. Again, it's just in the drop-down list. So it's fairly typical for advanced steel. The stay, obviously we've done it at the sleeve bolt, but I do know some people sometimes do them by angle rather than at the actual length of the sleeve. So there are other options if you're using different types of manufacturers in here. Again, the edge distance for the stay has been set. This is a parameter that would have come from the Steadman's criteria, and the bolt enter is centered at the moment, the bolt distance on the leg of the stay. Obviously, you can control the stay plate size if you so wish. This wouldn't become active, obviously, if the stay was inactive, it would all be grayed out. And similarly, now the stay bolts are available under the bolts tab at the top here. So there's a little bit of changing between the tabs, but again, this is typical within joints for advanced steel. Hole settings have all been set to standard. Obviously, if you want to do anything different, slotted or whatever, you would have to come in and change here. Probably use something extended round or slotted. Will give you an option if you should need it. Similarly, there's an option for welds at the bottom, so you could control some of the welds if you want them to be different than the normal typical fillet weld. And obviously the last tab is the library entry, where you would make a library entry as you would normally do. Once you do have a joint in place, obviously it works with the normal joint copy tools here, so you can use a singular copy tool, either selecting the grey box around the edge or an element of the joint. So I'm just going to select the stay as an example here. I'm then going to select the column and the purlins in turn, sort of following the prompts at the bottom. If you're not familiar with using the joint copy tools, probably use the very simple one here, which is just joint copy, because that actually gives you an opportunity to actually see the prompts again. So hopefully that gives you an outline of what is required to put a double purlin joint in place here. The same joint is actually also used on the roof as well for the purlins as well as the side rails. So it is a double joint really, and it is also applied in different situations. And again, there are configurations within the joint for the different section sizes under the Steadman's install.